And it's as easy as that. Graeme Doolan,
Oh,
thanks for joining me this evening.
awesome, bro. Thanks for having me. Really excited, actually. I was had a little trouble sleeping. I was pretty excited to chat to Eric.
Oh, well,
You know,
thank you.
we've talked for many years, man. So but
Yeah, well,
this is
all
as in
mine.
person.
The
Oh,
pleasure's all
appreciate
mine.
that.
And I think by the reactions to the live stream, there's a lot of people looking forward to hearing from you today.
Yeah, that's the people that already know me know I can talk and I'm not scared. There's probably going to be more about. Come on, guys, we're going to get back to work at some stage. So in Australia here at the moment, it's 10 a.m. on Thursday morning. So once again, insert from the future jokes at any time.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Well, I used mine up already in our chat before this. So
Yeah.
jumping right in, the Aussie film trainer, and you also operate a shop. Which one came first? Was it the training or the shop?
Definitely the shop. We spent many years. It was late 90s I started, and window tinting was the film of choice back then. Like many of us, I decided that maybe do this for 2-3 months, get by. I was a mechanic prior to that, working on cars, and once I left that job, I was looking for something to do. A good friend of mine, Dave, said, come and do this, we're looking for people, and fast forward 25 plus years, and here we are. So there's a lot in the middle there I missed, but that was primarily the thing. I didn't have my own retail store until about 10 years ago.
Okay.
I was doing predominantly dealer work, and a couple of years ago, there's this infamous or famous person we know as Boyd Hunter. He's a good mate of mine, and he said, look, he was already training. He's been training a long time, window film. And I said, look, I want to do what you do. I need more staff. He's like, well, I'm at capacity. So we got talking, and along with a few other companies, including 3M, they've all come along and said, we'd love to have you. So now it's 80% of my work is training, and then the other 20 would be supporting other stores and either backing up that training because it's important. You can do your 2-day, 4-day course, but what happens afterwards is important. So yeah,
So with 80% of your time with training, like what actually draws you to the training? Obviously you can choose how you divide your time, but is it just the demand, or is it more like a passion or a mixture? Or?
It was definitely passion from the start. I also like a challenge. A lot of us if you've been slinging film for 20 plus years, it can get monotonous at times, particularly in a dealer setting. If you've got to tint 20 to 30 cars a day, with a team of guys, then you're just, oh, look, there's another BMW X5 to tint, and there's one behind it and one behind it. So looking for new challenges. And then there was definitely a necessity during COVID and post-COVID with staff. And, that I think that's worldwide. There was a lot of people getting paid to not work and getting paid better than you could offer. So our demand for work was high, which was surprising. But the staffing issues were the biggest ones. So I was, I dipped my toe in the water a few times. We'd trained some classes out of our store, but nothing I'd really seen, executed and sort of finessed over a 10-year period. And that's when Boyd said, look, come and join me, see what you think. So it was kind of that I could hedge a little bit. I didn't have to close my shop. I could find out whether it suited or not. That quickly evolved. It was straight away, can you do next weekend? Can you do next weekend? And then it got to a point where, you're working 8 days in a 7-day week, and you were like, this is relentless. So I really started to pivot straight away. I'm talking within 6 weeks, we were, oh wow, we might have to actually close the shop and go full time. So sorry, I guess to answer your question, it's passion keeps it going, but now the necessity has grown. They've just gone like, wow, we can actually upskill.
Okay. And then, training in general, like I feel like there's a lot of growth in training, right? There's physical locations opening up with training. There's independent trainers, there's part-time trainers, there's manufacturers that have their own trainers and distributors with their own trainers. So there's a lot of trainers, but not enough probably, because there's still staffing issues. And, where have you thought about, or where do you see like, how do you see training evolving and fitting into the industry in general? 5 years, if you can kind of look that 5, 8 year,
Yep.
of course you can't predict the future, but I'm curious what your kind of how you see it at least.
Yeah. My mindset on that would have to be all our businesses need to pivot as society shifts and evolves, like we're moving into electric vehicles. So you're like, all right, what does that mean for us? There's with doing, I see color change vinyl wraps have that. I don't think they've slowed down, but they're not accelerating in the same way. PPF and window tint's always been that high ticket item. However, the staffing issues, I find a lot of the management crew want to be across all aspects. So they might pivot within their business. They might be a car detailing shop and they only do paint correction. Now they want to add window tinting because the staffing issues are reflecting on their business in the window tinting industry. Window tinters are too busy and then seen as unreliable. So I find with a lot of them wanting to bring it in-house, we're getting systems where we can actually kind of do a one-stop shop and train in-house now. So the stores are getting larger, particularly here in Australia, where there's a lot of sort of one-man shows that is a successful store, but it's purely a staffing issue. So when we can go in and show them systems, which we might be a great installer, but we don't necessarily have systems in place. And I mean, you're the king of systems. We don't need to. I don't need to educate you on that. However, that's what helps. I said I was on the other side of the country and I saw the Tint Wizdom logo with Brett in his store, and I was like, "How good is it?" And he goes, "Man, it's designed for us." That's one of the key things that it really kicked off early on. That's what we're missing in business. We might be a great installer, we don't have processes, we don't have systems in place that make it autonomous for us to work. That's what makes it hard. So the training isn't just here's how we install and do a corner of a PPF, or here's how to do a clean install on window films. It's actually the full package deal. And I've learned way more in these last 2 years of training than I ever did as 20 plus years installing. So that's, as a trainer, I'm evolving and I'll evolve with it.
So
plus working with other trainers, it's awesome. Yeah.
Expand on that, if you would, as far as how you've sharpened your skills so much through training, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I guess the biggest part for me was install quality and understanding what my strengths were, but also utilizing what I'm learning to try and really hone in on my weaknesses and the things that I might have in my own business. I'd said, I don't do that, or I don't want to do that. And it's usually because I couldn't bring the quality or efficiency in that field. So if I wanted to make sure that, my PPF was on point, you need to work with your competition to then find out how good and how they're doing their processes. And none of that information was shared. So these groups and these meetings and podcasts and things like this that actually helping, this is how you can do it. Mike Norton pushes really hard and teaches a lot of people some really simple steps, but it's also reassuring you in your own business, you're doing the right thing. Manufacturers didn't have the trainers here to support products. So we'd have a product dumped on our doorstep and they said, there you go, there's the new best PPF, throw it on and let us know what you think. So then when failures happen, it was at expense of the installer or the shop owner. There was no training program to back with that. So there was so many avenues that I'm actually finding a niche in training alone as I've been lucky and fortunate enough to be able to PPF, wrap and tint and spend enough time on it to do that, but it was by necessity. Tinting I'm more proficient at, so I can make more money doing, but I'm really enjoying PPF, and the challenges that it brings. So then when I go back to tinting, I'm enjoying it again because I've had a break from it. For instance, this year I've tinted maybe 2 or 3 cars, where it used to be thousands a year. So when I go back and do it, it's still like, oh yeah, I've still got it, or oh wow, I better practice those, shaving top edges and doing things like that. So I find it really important to make sure that your trainer is up to date with current things, because if I go and do 6 weeks of PPF training with all these stores and somebody says, have you seen this product? There's absolutely every chance I haven't had a chance to look at it or even hear about it. So I don't think the trainers can keep up at this point. I talk with all our competitor trainers, there's I might be training for 3M, but I'm talking to other distributors and manufacturers and their trainers about their processes, and and that information's shared. We're independent trainers, so that helps. We're not, there's not the non-disclosure stuff that we're worrying about. We're not stepping on toes, and we're not even worried about that sensitive IP. We want to bring the industry up. We all seen our own shops suffer and our own installers suffer. We're all trying to manage how to bring those solutions up. A lot of my training now that's recently pivoted is to actual sales staff and the reps that go around and sell the products. Because I go, do you know what PPF is? And they're like, no. And he could be the top salesman of the month. Hasn't seen the product, and that's just the facts, right? And so then I get him to hold it, and he's sort of looking at which side's the sticky side, there's literally that they just haven't had that opportunity. So, and it's a blessing to the distributors and manufacturers that want to put that effort in, because it's at a large cost and a large outlay, and trying not to pass all those costs on to the installer, because you can go,
right,
sure, man, you can come in for the day and it's going to cost you $5,000. And they're like, I can't afford that. I can't see the value in that. So small niche groups, but there's also a balance there. We can train 20 people a day, but you're only going to get 10% retention. So trying to maximize information and them holding that information, but also really, really connecting with the guys so they actually get confident to apply the product that we're working on.
How long is your typical training session? Is it like 3 or 5 days, or do they go long?
For some of the manufacturer ones, they tend to be introductory at this point, because we need to flood the market with guys that are going to apply the product. And we also explain that we're not here to make you an expert. It's literally part of the training is to say, we're going to build some foundations and you need to go and practice. And with these fundamentals, you'll be able to, you'll have good foundations so you can actually see some success. I also encourage my trainees, regardless of who I'm facilitating the training for, to watch videos, learn, absorb, do reps. They're the important one. Boyd's famous for saying that, get the reps in. Just apply film. If it fails, you do a problem, you create a problem, remove it, replace. And I understand with window films, it's a lot easier to do that in terms of, cost of product. However, without seeing the different scenarios you're going to put yourself into, you're not going to get to that, to that experience. So at the moment, most of our courses, a maximum course is like 2 or 3 days. Ideally, we'd have each student for 5 days, and have maybe a class of 4 to 6. The issue I do find, even at end of day 2, I'm still full of energy and throwing out information, and I'm really excited. And I just watch everyone just walk off a cliff, and metaphorically, they're done, they're tapped. There's nothing, they're all blank stares, and, there's nothing left to give. So I find that I'd much rather give them 2 days, intense training, lots and lots of reps in that. So whatever product we're putting on is, look, here's loads of stock. Let's get through it. Yeah. 0 on the sales side of things. I don't push product. It's, it was important to me that I'm not there to sell a product to anybody. And it was very important that people get involved. You get some classes where there's 6 people just staring at you blankly, and you're like, wow, this is going to be exhausting to try and get these guys to engage. And then a mix of all in between. I've had plenty of people that know more than me in a class about a particular subject, and I'm like, I always invite them to come and help. I'd say I've been doing it 20 years. I've also only been doing it 20 years. So there's always room to grow with all of it. The famous never stop learning, I think really applies with our product. It's also really, really important to me, and I'll reiterate this, is communication across the globe. But things like this are super important. When you go on a pod, it kind of feels egotistical. We're like, hey, I'm the star, I'm et cetera. But I'm like, I need you guys, because I don't know what they don't know. So if we're here information sharing, they're like, interesting, I haven't seen that perspective. And it was only 10 years ago that I had the complete opposite perspective, that I wouldn't want to talk to Eric because he's trying to pick my brains about my business, and he wants to, you want information that I've earned and worked hard for. Well, that's really come back and bit us pretty hard, because now we don't have staff because we wouldn't share that information. So I feel like I feel like partly, I don't know to what sort of degree, but I really feel that there was definitely a large proportion of our industry being so secretive has now really sort of come back to be a difficult, like, why should I teach him? And I'm like, why not? But I genuinely, I was one of those guys, not necessarily trolling on the internet, or maybe it was, but it was like, oh, wow, you made that look hard, and it was putting guys down rather than actually lifting them up, and it was other industry leaders that went, you can use it for good or evil. It's up to you. It pulled me into line pretty quick when I started to see that perspective. So we were also trained that our shop was the best shop. Everyone else was below us. So you might as well just listen to us. Yeah. That was
something that changed too, because you're right, of course, obviously, like on how that evolved as a industry and as a community, but something that also changes, there's a lot more business out there now too. Like, people have more than a lot of people, not everybody, but there's a lot of shops in busy seasons where they're overwhelmed. They can't fulfill all the, they feel stacked. And like, that feeling then also starts to open the doors to trying to be helpful versus maybe 10 or 15 years ago where tint was $120 and like, it was kind of more of a hustle. But together, either way, it worked together to make for a much better industry.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a very good point, because it's now we need the help, and it might be from your, on paper, your competitor, but if you can prop each other up and continue to build and bring your market,
there's an actual market now. There wasn't really even a market before, right? I mean, it was just going wherever. What would you say? You mentioned how obviously you haven't learned everything yet, and you've learned so much as a trainer than more, maybe you said, as a trainer than prior to being a trainer. What would you say to somebody who's, maybe whether they be an employee at a shop or maybe they own their own shop and they want to one day soon maybe be a trainer, but they're kind of thinking, how do I know I'm good enough to be a trainer?
Sure. That's definitely a difficult one, because that was a massive insecurity of mine when I started, that I'm going to be exposed that I'm not good enough to be this guy. And it takes a series of things. And one is that communication skill. So be able to not only listen, but also instruct in a way that is getting through to the trainee or the person you're training. So maybe help and find different ways to break down the walls that people don't want to fail, right? On the face of it, we don't want to look silly. We don't want to, we don't want to be wrong, all those things. And your ego is going to protect you a lot of the time. So to open your ears is just as hard as to share your information sometimes. So you can actually just go, I'll just take this in for what it is. I might already know this. I might know it differently. I might be better than this, or have evolved from this point. When I listen to why somebody's at, I'm sort of evaluating at what stage they're at in their career, and not from a judgment. And that's what I mean. I'm not judging where they're at. I'm sort of evaluating. If I'm better than them, it might be only due to me having more information. I'm not a better person. I've just had more time with that product or that skill set, or I've got a wider perspective now. I've met thousands of people in the last couple of years that I definitely never would have met if I was still just in my shop, and nor would I have the time or the energy to, or the need to, where now I walk into stores and there'll be 5 pro installers, and I'm like, man, what value do I bring here? So I'll just jump in and just go, do you guys need a hand? And this was a case only a few months ago that a manufacturer said, I really want you to come in and train these guys. I'm like, they're already pumping out great work. It's already a high volume shop. The nerves I had before walking in there were like next level, because it's kind of like a job interview, but they've already said you're the best. So the guys are going to be like, who is this guy? So don't oversell me, just say I'm going to come and help, and there might be some things I'm missing. And they were just steps in their processes that they were sort of shortcutting or hadn't been taught. And I exposed them by saying, have you seen it done this way? Rather than you're doing it wrong. So it's being really introspective as opposed to dominating and saying you're doing it wrong. I'm like, cool, that's one way of doing it. Absolutely. I actually used to do it that way. Somebody else showed me this. So rather than taking credit for something I know, I'm real passively entering that conversation. And plus, if he's the ego of the shop, he might be the most experienced. And I don't mean this in a bad way, but he might be the one that's protective of his shop. He's very proud. I don't want to shoot him down and say, you've done it wrong and this is why it's failing. Here's the thing that you can do differently. Maybe you can add it. Maybe it's useless information. Maybe you already know it. You know, but I have success in this way. It really disarms people. So if you're that installer that wants to look at a career bigger than just being an installer, go take some training classes. Evaluate what's happening in the room. It doesn't mean he's a good trainer. It doesn't mean I'm the best trainer. It's not. It's what's your experience and what do you want to deliver to your trainees? What value can you bring to the room, as opposed to I need to be better than them. You know, that's the key thing. I'm trying to, because ultimately you're there to train because they've got problems or faults in their business, right? And it might just be inefficiencies or lack of skill and information. Once you walk in, you got to be very careful exposing that. You know, that wrapper's no good, the tinter's useless. You know, that's you're not going to get very far. So the relationship between knowing what their business needs and the challenges they face. I have one today where I'm actually at a store at the moment that we're downstairs doing some PPF, and I'm showing some of his staff. He wanted to be part of it, but he has to run the store. You know, and I was like, that's cool. I get it. You know, I know you wanted to be hands-on and doing all this and it's enjoyable, but when you're in your own store, you still have to run your store. So I've got to kind of take command of this situation, run it autonomously, that his guys are engaged and looking after it, you know, still assessing with him and obviously communicating with him. I don't come in and take over. So there's many aspects to what different businesses need. Other guys just want, give me the hot tips and get out of here. Cool, man, we can do that. You know, you just want to, let's see where you're at. Maybe say we're vinyl wrapping, come and do this mirror for argument's sake. It's a quick, small, fast process to do. I can establish very quickly what they're doing with that. So I can go, all right, let's rework that and reverse engineer a basic setup. But I'll check things like prep. What do you do? How do you engage that? Oh, we just wipe it. Oh, okay, well, maybe we need to address that. So assessment and really working out exactly where they are in their part of their business and what stage their career as an installer, because there's also a massive mix. You know, there's the 35-year veteran that, you know, some of them love to hear from me, and then other guys, they won't even listen to my name. And I'm like, cool either way, because they're kind of missing out, right? They're missing out on the engagement. Then the young blokes that they want to show you their cool car, you know, and you're like, cool, it's not what we're here for. So you got to direct, and, you know, so I think as advice, that was a long-winded answer again. I think really the good advice would be go and experience some training yourself. If you've been tinting 10 years, go do a tint course. Go see what you learn. First time I picked up a file to file a top edge was 15 years into tinting. And then I was like, oh, it's pretty cool. It's actually useful for corners. I get nicer corners filing than I did shaving. You know, then pros and cons. But I was just instilled that information early on that don't use a file, that's cheating. Use a knife and do it the hard way. The hard way is the good way. I said, that doesn't make any sense, but all right, I'm in. So open-minded, but really shut your mouth and open your ears, which is kind of ironic coming from me, because I'm definitely a big talker, but at the same time, I think it's important that you're trying to listen and assess where a business is at. Because they do it different doesn't mean they do it wrong. I'm sure you see a lot of this too, right? With systems, like I use this system and I like it because X, Y, Z.
Right. It's
we see the evolution of Tint Wiz.
Right. And there's like, even within a system, there's different routes and preferences and so on. So, So the American film trainer, Marco Cazorla, shared a Facebook post today on like virtual training, like YouTube and online courses versus in-person training. What are your thoughts overall on that? Not which is necessarily better, because what's better and so on, but how do you see them both fitting into this, into, you know, the industry and into how people could take advantage of them? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think virtual assessment is difficult. However, virtual assistance is really, really helpful. You know, so a combination of going in person, what's your skill set, the way, you know, particularly say with window film and shading a top edge, it's one of and even the nuance of shrinking rear screens, of how far the squeegee goes, how much pressure you use. All those nuances are really, really difficult to portray in a video. You know, that I can demonstrate with a squeegee card and pushing on it and showing the amount of flex. But how fast do you push? What happens when the film grips? You know, there's so many variables in there that you're not going to necessarily demonstrate in the video. You know, we've often seen it with demo videos or how-to videos that it'll give you a brief outline, but there's a lot missing. So the problem and the cost of having in-person training is how much time do you have? And, you know, you have students that they've just got stuff going on at home. You know, they're not engaged, they're not listening. There's, you know, so there's problems there where the beauty of a video, they can go back to it in their own time, you know, and they're ready to be engaged in learning. The answer to that is a combo of both. There is no, like you said, there's no better, but I think one definitely complements the other. The contradictory training methods, you know, so I might do it this way and Carlo does it this way, or Marco does it this way. It's literally you've got to think about there's different ways to achieve the same goal. That even my shaving techniques have changed. I did it 20 years for this way, and then I started working with another guy that does it a different way. And it was just less damage on the blade. So the top edge didn't change. It didn't look any different. But I was like, there's nuance in nuance, you know, so it was those finer details can keep evolving. And it's going to change from if I trained you with you and train somebody else, you know, that you're going to have different skill sets that I can work with, rather than try and untrain you and say, look, you're doing it the wrong way. You're holding your squeegee with your left hand. You can't do it. It doesn't work. You know, I'm an ambidextrous trainer. I'm always using both hands. I'm squeegee, you know, left and right, and shave left and right. Some guys just can't pick up the knife with the left hand. You know, I get it. It's, you know, I can't write with my left hand. So if they have a skill set that you can work with, you know, and then they'll be better on, say, a, you know, driver's side to a passenger side. That has to come up to the individual. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and find the evolution and the work within yourself. Us as trainers are only facilitating information. You know, that's sharing what we've learned, putting it in a process that you can help understand, but it doesn't mean that we're going to be better installers than you. Experience and wisdom and all those things all add up. But I think the end goal really is the onus has to be on the trainee. Be a good trainee with a good trainer. You know, are you going to put your homework in? That was the whole idea about education, right? We could only get so much in person at school. Then when we leave school or college or uni, then we'd move into, you have to study at home. You have to put the hours in. You have to do that. There is no different when we're applying these systems, you know, and processes. You know, you got to wet a window. You've got to put the film on. You've got to remove the water or the solution. I think he did a really good deal of explaining that. You know, I think you could unpack that for hours on end, right? Just that part in itself, that subject, I should say. But I do believe they complement each other. You've got to also find the one that suits you. You know, my energy might not match a lot of people, and that's cool. You know, maybe I'm not the trainer for you. You know, I've clashed with a lot of people in training, and it's not on purpose. You know, I'm trying to find the same lane that they're in, and I wouldn't say a lot, but it's, you know, you're just finding you don't have that same buy-in, and where they went and did, you know, say Hexus training, and they were like, that guy was amazing. You know, one of the best training courses that I went in was a 5-day Hexus course, but I was so engaged, and it was the biggest thing, you know, in my career, that I was like, man, I'm going to take it all in. And I still remember specific conversations from those 5 days, but I wholeheartedly don't remember everything. You know, that's the key point. That's where it needs to come back and practice.
Business-wise, what do you see, like, what improvements do you see most common, you know, what issues do you see business-wise that you're most commonly able to improve when you walk into businesses, when you think back? Something that maybe somebody watching or listening is going to go, oh, that's something I kind of do or whatnot. What are the common ones that you see?
Mostly, I would say for, you know, because we're all in business for profit. The biggest thing I see is efficiency, and what helps with efficiency. I was a really good installer, but I'm that ADHD kind of person that's just running around. You know, I've got that frantic, you know, I'm putting that fire out, and I'm fitting this thing and doing those. That was always my style, I'd like to call it. The problem with that, there wasn't a lot of, if somebody else had to take my place, they're like, what is this chaos? You know, there was no, So there was no efficiency or there was no process tied to that. So it worked for me to a degree, but it was definitely the bottleneck when it come down to, I need to make sure that all these people are across all these jobs, and those people in particular that you have working with you and for you don't necessarily own it and love it to a level that you do, and they don't live and breathe it. You know, they're thinking about their dog or their grandma and other things that are important to them, where the business just completely envelops everything I do. There's a wide range of those people in business. You walk in and there's a store owner where everything's meticulous, and you know you can't comfortably stand in the place. So you've got to work out the inefficiencies in your business, knowing, I guess, business goals are a big thing, and making them clear and you drive for your business. Having that on a wall, as cliche as it seems, but in a workshop space, doesn't need to be out in the reception. I really think once all your staff have a culture and understand what the business is there for, everybody's, even loosely, moving in the same direction.
Yeah.
Leadership's key. If the leader, the boss, the manager, whoever it may be, is fried to the, you know, he's unapproachable, overwhelmed, all those things, then he can't pass on any useful information. So I really find that leadership and management team that implement, and they don't have to be good installers. So if you're a good installer and you can't communicate with your manager who isn't an installer, you guys have to find a path. So once again, be a good installer and be part of that team. You know, there's hierarchy in business, particularly bigger businesses. But if you want a good leader, why don't you be a good installer? You know what I mean? You can still lead from the bottom to a degree. So there's managing your floor, managing your workspace, those inefficiencies that you see in your business, in their business, pass it up the food chain. You know, if it's blocking there, everybody has to be introspective enough to find that. I find that successful businesses are run by the person that's across everything, but he has a good flow of hierarchy underneath him. And that communication really flows from, you know, the guy that's sweeping the floor, who might be the trainee, right through to the CEO, you know, or the director of the company. And that might even be 3 people in the whole company. But if there's not that communication and everybody's not approachable with the same goal in mind, because most people's, I want to be an employee because I don't care about business. Think about that business as employing you. So you probably should care about that business. Take some ownership on all levels, I really think is important. And the ones that I get to see that are really flowing, it's usually the ones where even the staff that are busy on the floor, they'll like pop up and they'll, hey man, how you going? And I was like, good mate, thanks. You know, the culture is there, that background noise, where if you walk into a store and everyone's avoiding you and trying not to make eye contact, you know, particularly if I'm wearing a 3M shirt, they're like, oh, you must be a rep. You know, so they're like, I don't want to get stuck talking to a rep, I'm busy, or something like that. So I find it really interesting, that culture shift, but it stems from those systems in place. And for me, it's communication. That's the big one. You know, I'd never want unhappy staff at my, you know, the worst thing I could ever do as a leader, and the worst feeling I've had as a leader, when I failed, you know, my people, where they're like, man, I'm not happy here. You know, that's devastating to me, because I was proud of my business and I work really hard and I do all these things. But if they're just like, it's not for me, you know, I'm stressed, I'm this, I'm that. And I was like, probably because I'm really stressed. You know, I'm just passing that down, that pressure down the line. So it goes back to, if you want to evolve as an installer, what else can you do? Sure, it's above and beyond your pay grade and your ticket, but even if you feel that it's not appreciated, be consistent and then find the right spot for you. You know, you can still grow by, you know, I never want to be a manager. I might want to just be a trainer, or I might want to shortcut to that. Reach out to trainers. You know, I'd love to have an apprentice trainer, you know, if there was such a thing, you know, because it's fun to watch trainers evolve, you know, as they have a class. One of the scariest things you can do as an installer is reach out to your industry and go, can I teach you? You know, can I be part of the leadership here? Because if you're not accepted by your own industry, particularly that you've been in for decades, it's a scary thought to just put it out on the line. And I think we have great leaders in this industry too. You know, the guys at all the Facebook groups, you know, we've seen conflict over the years and everything else, but at the same time, there's, as a whole, so many people coming together with all the same goal in mind. We're all there to feed our families. We're all there to do those things. So yeah, I find if you run that same style in your business, but also be that same person outside of your business. I love listening to Mike Burke's pod. He's a true leader. He's an alpha, but at the same time, you know where you stand. It's clear information, good communication. Never met him personally, but that's the vibe you get, So, and there's many, many people like that in our industry.
Speaking of that, are you going to be at the WFR family reunion in July?
This year I'll be there. Had some complications getting there last year. That was very, very frustrating. But yeah, we're really, really looking forward to it. I'll be there with the Tinter crew, and we'll be working the booth and working the floor, and I'll be there talking everyone's ear off. And I know I owe Jason a beer. He had one for the Tintertainment, the Tinter battles that were he promised me a red carpet and a beer. So mate, I might have to return the favor.
So will you be, if you know yet, will you be like, if somebody wants to maybe get a little bit of training from you, maybe, learn a couple things, will you be training and like demoing and to that capacity?
Yeah.
Yep.
I will be absolutely open to anything like that. So, and I'm not interested in getting paid for it. It was literally that information sharing, just even somebody that's thinking about being a trainer, feel free to reach out, including come and say hello. I genuinely enjoy meeting other people in the industry. I'm amazed by this industry that across the globe, I can, fly to London and literally start work tomorrow. I've been to Texas, and when I was there, they were like, "Oh wow, you just, you do things so differently, like you're amazing." And I was like, "I'm like not even that good. You should see the guys, that I work with." It was just that you're not exposed to it, so you don't see it. So now that's the really fun part, these seminars where we can get together and, these big shows. And then like we just had one recently in Australia and there was like 25 of us, there's maybe a few more. And that's a really decent turnout for us Aussies to actually, put tools down and get together. And, that was run by the crew at Oz Window Films. It was a Tint Hooligans catch up, which was a Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
But so many that I've been talking to for like a decade that I'd never met face to face, and they're within an hour or two drive of me. But it's just the opportunity. I don't want to interrupt their business and vice versa. We're all very busy. When you dedicate the time to do that, and if you're thinking about should I go or should I, watch the people that have gone and went, oh my God, I didn't think I'd get that much value in it. Because it's hard to fathom, right? When you're like, sure, you've run your own booths and you're just like, I was overwhelmed with time and, the amount of flow of people, but I left electrified. I really did, just going like, man, can we do another one tomorrow? It was fantastic. So yeah, really high value things. And then the generosity is going through the roof too, with things like Tinter for a Cause. And, there's so many amazing people pushing amazing things, and not for their own gain. That's the key thing. That's when it's a higher power, right? That, and that's what I mean about, if I can just share the information I've learned over the years and that's helping somebody, man, I'd love to.
Yeah. I mean, the ripple effect of what everybody's doing by helping each other and so on, like the seen ripple effect and then the unseen ripple effect is, I just feel like enormous, unquantifiable, and, just what it's all about. Speaking of that, you mentioned you would be with the Tinta crew, and Tinta gave away a vehicle at the last WFR family reunion. I think the word is possibly giving away another vehicle this year. What could you tell me about Tinta? I mean, I've seen it everywhere. I've seen the tools, I've seen the hats, I've seen the shirts, I've seen the brand everywhere and the tools in everyone's hand. Who gives away a car? Tell me, what is going on?
Well, that's the trying to hide in generosity, which is, it's irony in itself. But with the Tinter crew, it was a bunch of us that got together and went, we want to create and replicate that feeling that we were just talking about, that we're all tinters, and I see this is a common thing, even with, opposing teams or, whatever you want to call it. We're all we've got that common goal. we wanted to share that common goal and say, what do we need and how can we grow it? So that really facilitates, it's not a great business plan when you just give away, all your profits and everything else, but it's kind of like that give back. There was we did a bushfire appeal years ago for Boyd's. The bushfires went through Australia and destroyed a lot of stuff, and one of the schools got taken out, and the school was saved by the janitor, and he was, but he lost his house. So we just got tinters together, and a lot of tinters just turned up because it was, all right, it's the right thing to do. I don't, we've got nothing to do with that school, or, the bushfires are bad. How can I help? And whether they're there for an hour or the whole 14 hours, but we tinted all these cars. All these other people jumped on board and gave it away. That was one of the first times I got to witness our industry unify. Tinter was the antithesis of that. We just wanted to, really evolve into going, how can it help? How can it continue to help? And it's difficult because it looks like you're just selling a brand, right? So when we're using tinter tools, me using a tinter squeegee means a lot more than just holding that squeegee. Watching what tinter can do and facilitate to, like you said too, a lot unseen. There's a lot undisclosed because there's, you don't want to look like you're gloating or showing off anything. Just get it done. That person needs help. That thing needs to happen. That, that process needs to go. So if it brings volumes of people in by giving away a vehicle, what comes back in return is tenfold, and I don't even mean financially. Like I said, it's a horrible business plan when you spend more than you make, but at the same time, it's what you get in return isn't the financial part. It's that camaraderie. It's that, so looking at being proud to wear somebody else's brand. I should be wearing, my business name, and I'm wearing someone else's, and they're like, what the hell's going on there? That's bad marketing. And I'm like, it's not what it's for. It means a lot more. That could be coming with age too. I'm getting all soft and, less, I'm like, oh man, we're all in the same boat. Let's help each other.
How old are you?
45. So it's,
how long has this been happening to you? Feeling this way?
Yeah.
What age did it start, would you say?
Be careful what you want to unpack here, buddy. That could go a long way. No, man, I genuinely love it. And that's the thing. I love to give. Everyone does, right? There's a beautiful feeling of that. You sent me a care package before the Tinter battles, and I got, all these flags, and I was like, my lounge room is just covered in, all the everything Tint Wiz. And my wife's like, what the hell? What are you doing? What is this? And I was like, do you like it? It looks amazing. I didn't have a workshop to put it all up in. So it was,
cool.
While you guys are at Tinter battles, that was me at home here in Queensland. So, it was pretty funny. But it's that warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah.
If you can get that, that constant, and you don't want to go and sort of thin out the waters too much by just going like, everything's free, let's go. Like, we're all in business, we're all working hard. But at the same time, if that person needs that prop up, and whether it's, spiritually, just a friendly smile, a bit of information, or some tools, or a car, the car helps. All of those things, you got to know how many people were happy for the winner. You know what I mean? Like that shows a lot, right? Where it's just like, awesome, congratulations, man. You couldn't have gone to a better person.
Yeah.
I kind of feel it, and no discredit to him at all. It was like, there were so many people that could have had that, and we would have had the same feeling, and where it's just like, man, that is awesome. Fantastic. You're well deserved. That's more about what our industry can be, as opposed to, the old days of, like I said, I saw the shift, right? And you've experienced it yourself, from that feminine mentality to now where, we've got some abundance, let's share it, and let's support each other. So yeah, Tinter means a lot to a lot of us. And it's more than a brand, it's that, for us, it's that worldwide, man, it's actually hard to fathom in that, I wish there was a word other than that's what Tinter means to us. If I could just go, it's that family, it's that everything I'm going to say here is cliche. So,
Well, I didn't know. I was asking because I didn't know, and that's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
and to
cool.
hear that story.
Yep.
I I think everybody needs to hear that story. You know what I mean? Like, it needs to be
that's true. That's fair.
What a great reason behind.
Yeah. And that's, we've got our private business chat about it, and most of it is like, it's the same thing in the chat. There might be some things we need to facilitate, but at the same time, we're all like, man, things are great, awesome, good job. That's that. Like, I go back to that leadership and say, these processes need to be in place. We all need to take our, be a good employee, be a good spokesperson, be all these things. Everybody has to play a part to make something great, so if you've got great people in there, that's all good. But if they're not connecting and they're not sharing that information, what good is it? And there's challenges. I'm not saying it's all perfectly run, and and there's, you drop the ball sometimes, and then you go, all right, let's prop each other up. Let's help. How do we get there? And they've been I wholeheartedly love to be an ambassador for them, because it's a no-brainer for me, because they're not there to sell you inferior things to try and benefit from that. Like I said, if you actually look at the business model, it's not amazing in that we're just facilitating something to give back, but at the same time, it's growing exponentially. So where we want to give quality products, support the industry, half the time our tinters are trying to create tools and make tools because they don't have access to them. So particularly here in Australia, when it's up to our distributors, right? If our distributors don't have that access to the tools, or even know what we want, so then it was, tools made by tinters for tinters, all those sorts of cliche. And I've seen marketing strategies over the years of different companies, but it really is that thing. We're living and using them and trying them and testing them and evolving. And tinter's been around for quite a while, but it was always, we had a bit of merch here, and we're sort of like, we had our own businesses to focus on, and then it's like, hey man, can you help me with this? And there's no one person wholly responsible for it, and I watch it constantly growing, and I don't see an end for it in any way. There's no end goal. There's no like, let's build this company to sell it. I think it's one and the same. The tint school's the same. I'm a trainer for the tint school, and that's a 2-day course that's been honed over thousands of people. When you train thousands of people, you really knuckle down on processes. One of the speeches that come out of that, and one of the key components, I should say, is trust the process. Just listen and follow it. There's steps to it. You're going to have hiccups along the way, but break it down into that, and you won't be overwhelmed. I mean, the first time you pick up a bit of film, it's very foreign. That's just, I need that on there, but you can't touch it, and all those sorts of things. But the tint school as a whole was really developed to support our industry, because nobody was training. Manufacturers weren't training, and because they didn't see value in it. So then it lost. We weren't worried about the value. How about, I'm getting older. I can't tint 30 cards a day. I can't tint 10 or want to. There was my 20s and 30s. I was like, let's see how many can I do in a day? That was the competition. Where I also don't want to just wind down and say, all the information I have and skills that I've learned over the years of doing the hard yards die with me. Share it all before you go. I mean, not on my last legs or anything just yet, but I still, it's going to be an epic involvement with companies like this, the Tint School, Tinter, PFD, who's one of our suppliers over here, and 3M have really embraced the same thing. I've got to give them a lot of credit. They just took me on as, they were like, yep, you're a great installer, let's do it. Do some train the trainer. And our national trainer here has been training for a long time, Chris Cook, amazing human, but just the same thing, overwhelmed with work. We're all screaming at them for more resources. They're like, what about us? We're also trying as well. So I think the challenging times, we all step up a little bit. That's where we see this whole collective grow. So, and I don't mean to sound so profound, but it's like literally that, those little things, big things grow. If we, with you doing a podcast, I can come in here, share information, and show all these dots connect. People go, I can be part of that. Well, you are part of it. Involve yourself, help out, and it might only start at a store level, so you might just start by, what, I could have picked that bit of rubbish up. Just that shift in thinking, rather than going, I'm not going to pick up that liner off the floor because, Bob dropped it. It's not my problem. Right. Yeah, just pick it up for no thanks. Just pick it up. That's all. Move on.
Right. 100%.
You know, yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't deserve a pay rise. You just pick some rubbish up, move on. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. You said earlier how, obviously like things used to be more secretive and that held back maybe the industry in a way. However, it also in a way preserved the industry to where now it's like almost more in everybody's hands to do with it what they want, like to treat it like that tree of life that provides everybody shade and everybody money and everybody food and so on. Because it's
yeah,
not something that has been, it's not an enormous industry. It's not something that has been exploited and trashed and whatever. It's
yeah. True.
still in its infancy in a way,
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny actually. I've never had that perspective on the infancy of what it is. I have within myself thought about, how much do I have to learn, and how much time do I have left to learn as much as I can, and then go on to share it. But I haven't even thought about the evolution of the industry as a whole, because window tinting really hasn't changed from its inception, right? Putting film on glass. The processes and the people in it have definitely changed, but I really find that when the products haven't shifted that much, there's been variations of it and external films and all sorts of stuff, but predominantly same process. It's still amazes me how many cars out there aren't tinted.
Sure.
Let's not even talk about flat glass and,
Sure.
you guys in the States have better efficiency on your, we all have single pane, we don't see double pane glass here in Australia very much at all. So it's most of it's single pane glass on buildings. Automotive wise, we share the same sort of thing, but it's the standard has always been set predominantly in the US, so we just follow suit. You guys, this is a new film, it's a new thing, ceramic comes out and we start using that. It performs better, we use that. There's not much else you can do with it. So watching people just constantly trying to lift it up is a really cool thing to see, because then that's when explosions happen, right? When things can actually evolve. I think tinting in itself is a process, but the industry in itself, like you're saying, is really in its infancy. I'd love to be around for another 45 years to see what it evolves to,
Yeah.
I'd love to be talking to a 20-year-old bloke going, back in my day, we're using hair dryers and, that's, yeah.
Just the difference from like physically, you could look at what the shops look like right now from compared to maybe an average shop 5 or 10 years ago. And it's like, that's just one aspect of like one result of like the growth of this industry, where you would have never seen, maybe a Ferrari dealer look like somebody's shop is today. It looks nicer than a Ferrari dealer did 8 years ago. Like a lot,
Yeah.
legitimate.
And it's become the new standard, right? It wasn't just the elite shops. It was if I want to open a shop, it has to be well lit and clean, and which it's so funny now, but we used to see where we used to work, where I was like, man, a lot of times I've tinted a lot of vehicles outside, and this is for new car dealers. And they were like, yeah, it's not that important. Just do it out there. We
do it under the tree.
Yeah. You're just like, you got shade, stop whinging, that's yeah, man. But it was, and it's still to some degree, because there's still those old school dealer owners and dealer principals that still push that narrative. You're just going like, tinting's necessary. However, it's a pain. You guys are painful and you guys are always whinging, and so you walk in there and you're like the enemy in a dealership. So there's still a lot of growth even to happen in that regard. Outsource it to a shop that's facilitating amazing setup, and they've got efficiency, so your cost doesn't have to blow through the roof. But how about sharing some of that responsibility, where so there's growth in so many different aspects, and now our manufacturers and our reps are starting to actually understand what it takes, and I see them taking ownership. Look, man, I don't think window tint's for you. You don't really have the facility for it. I've literally heard those words come out, to a customer. And it was a car detailing shop, but there was compound and dirt and dust everywhere. So he's like,
right,
perhaps build something.
That's something for all tinters who are thinking get into paint correction and they're in a small space. Don't add that to your tint. It's not.
Yeah.
Find out later.
Yeah. And it's, so do your research, right? If you do want to add it, and there might be people listening to this that haven't done window tint, but talk to tinters. And there's a lot of tinters don't want to give up that information, but also, talk to other shop owners, talk to what does it take? Has it been a good add-on? Has it, so they're conversations I'm having from the manufacturer and rep side. How can we add value to our customers? Obviously, they want to sell product. And I said, well, how about listening to the customers about they just dump products on their doorstep and without any support, which is double-sided, because then they're like, cool, when can you go and train them? I'm like, oh, the calendar's pretty full at the moment, but at the same time, we've got to think about looking after the industry. We go and dump film at everyone's doorstep, everyone's throwing on film and bringing down the quality again, then you're going to hunt down that $100, 120 tint shop jobs. So we don't really, that's not what we're trying to achieve. Keeping the standard at a high level, sharing that information, but also those expectations. It's important to me that I see guys putting out good work.
Sure.
And rather than thinking they were inferior, that's what I used to believe. I'm like, you're not as good as me, or not as good as my shop or my friend or whatever it may be. I would say, hey man, do you need a hand? You know what I mean? It's that same interaction. I still see the poor quality, but why is that? Did you know if you actually put a thing up here or some lighting, you might actually get better quality? What's your water source? Well, these sorts of things that maybe they've never thought about. They haven't learned it. So I think the evolution of the industry in itself has got, who knows, it's hard to put a cap on. You said before about where do you see it in 5 years? I think we're spinning the wheel so much now. I think in kicking off the training worldwide, you're seeing to a lot of people, I might be a trainer that just popped up, but I've been putting in the hours and hours, for a couple of years doing it, and even prior to that, the couple of decades doing the job. That I'm never saying I'm the best. It's I want to share the information I have, and please share yours.
Yeah. And
whether you're a student of the game from a week, maybe you come from carpentry and you bring a different skill set. Talk to me. Yeah, it's a new, fresh face. It's a different perspective. Because if I'm teaching a tinter or working with a tinter that's been tinting for 10 years, a lot of the time you're only regurgitating to what he's been exposed to. So if he's only worked with one other person for 10 years and he hasn't evolved, then that's all he's going to know. So there's so many different shifts that I see from the same classroom. There's not really a parallel with, if we had 10 tinters with 10 years experience, they're all at such different levels. It's really what they're exposed to. So yeah, I think keep that in mind, like I said, from the installer level right through to the leadership level, depending on where your career wants to go. Perhaps you want to stay as an installer. Why not be the best possible installer you can be in all aspects? Like I said, inviting to others, you're not going to lose job security if you add value.
Right.
People are worried about sharing information, and then they're going, yeah, but they're going to teach him, and then they're going to get rid of me because he's cheaper. That's absolutely a possibility, which means it's probably going to open a door for you to be at a better place too. So if you don't add value, then how can you expect more? So I think there's a whole lot of things that we had to take ownership of. I don't like my boss. I want a better boss. Be a better employee. Be a better installer. Be a better, person all around. It's I harp back on it, but I kind of say that the tinting's like the byproduct of what happens in your store. If it's just a tint store and it's a great, efficient, happy place to be, that's attractive. That's attractive to customers, and it's attractive to people to work there.
Right. And customers, customers and staff both have more options than ever these days, I would say, where they want to work and who they want to give their money to. So you have to make the place attractive to both, right?
Yeah. And I don't want my boss or seniors or trainers to think the same way I do, because what am I going to learn? If we all think the same way and do everything perfectly the same way, I don't mean to be in a, conflict. I think more so to actually say, you can get perspective, and that perspective shift on this, like we said multiple times on this pod, that there's different ways to do the same thing. So why don't we all evolve and get it done more efficiently, and that's the key thing to becoming a trainer and learning more, was to seeing the different ways of things that are done, because then I make an evolution of my own, that I grow, and then I get to add all these little things that I learn along the way and check my inefficiencies. And that's as a person, as a husband, as a trainer, as a worker, all of those things, like I'm inherently late. what I logged in 1 minute before the start time, because I'm busy over here doing this thing and it's trying to be focused, but it's stuff you're working on constantly. There's always a way to improve, but it's being introspective enough to do that. And look, in a perfect world, a lot of the time I get to sit with leadership as opposed to the installers to do their training, but it's not what my job is there to do. But if I can get the leadership to come down and go, look, man, these guys are going to really struggle with this facility. So you're trying to upskill your tinters, and I usually take liberty and say those sort of things. I'll just go, look, your facility needs work. That's going to be your next issue. So we can put the guys on that can do it, and they've got, you need a clean space. And then the facility I rock in today, they've got misting systems that keeps dust suppression, and I was like, can I just walk everybody through this shop, and show everyone, that's kind of where I go, could this be like a tour that I can show other people how it should be done? So just go and borrow $500,000 and set this system up, and we'll all be in a great place. But yeah, I digress.
Well, you mentioned you mentioned you were in the busy part of you were busy before this. I imagine you're busy after this too. It's a busy part of your business.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you very much taking time on here to come on and share all this wisdom. I have to ask, are any plans for a podcast of your own, whether it be audio only or audio and video?
I think I'd have to do it video. I get too many good guests, and I find the engagement in video is enough. Having it audio friendly like this, there'll be a lot of people just listening audio only. But I think that seeing that personal engagement gives you a feeling of engagement. So clearly I put a lot of thought into it already, and the answer would be yes. There is something coming up.
Good.
And please be a guest, and I'd love to have you on and pick your brain. I really enjoy your podcast. So
thank you. I definitely will. Whenever you say the word, I'll be there. Whatever day and time, I'll be in the past.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to throw it in there, and
and
and definitely consider doing some on your own. I feel like you don't need somebody to even talk to, almost, because you have so much to share.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't mind coming on to ask you questions, but I want to hear more from you. So,
awesome, man. No, I genuinely appreciate you giving me the time too. It's like I said, it's as much as people wouldn't realize, it is actually nerve-wracking to get on here and to share it to some degree. I've got my safe space, even in front of 12 students. I get kind of less nervous, but sort of exposing it out to the world, it is what it is. I'm not perfect, but I'm definitely aiming for that right until the day I pass. And I think if we can all level each other up, that's definitely a shout out to Shady J. I really love his take on it. What's he say? Be who you needed. That hits home with me. That because I was being who I was treated by. Like I was just repeating the pattern. And then when I made a shift and changed into that person, that's really why it did that for me. I just went, and think about that in your own life. To anyone else listening, just, man, you can absolutely, from your home life to your work life, it's amazing how contagious that is. Because it's also contagious. If you want to be a shitty person, you can bring people down around you, and you'll connect with the energy you're looking for. So, yeah, if you want to bring it up and be happy, you'll have to absolutely connect with those people.
That's it.
So
no time to find
on that.
Yeah, go ahead. No, on that. That's great advice, because it's like life advice that really can completely change somebody's life. Just realizing that if they're not in the headspace, or if you want to have a change in your life, it really does come down to being that person. To start being that person, and like you said, it attracts those people around you. If you're in a bad mood, I'm sure you can find somebody else who's gonna make it worse.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that used to be my MO. It was be like, I'm angry and I'm looking around and I'm like, there's the other angry guy. Let's have it out. Like that was you'd connect with that energy. So it was interesting to find. But if you're walking around smiling, the angry guy wants nothing to do with you. And he's like, look, how annoying is that guy? That's the challenge. But it's a joy, and you're not your past. You're not who you were. It's who you are now. And moving forward, you can constantly be that person. So I'm not trying to get philosophical or anything with it, but it's also man, it's much easier. Being angry and upset is hard work. It really is. It's exhausting. So
on yourself and the people around you, your loved ones, your friends. It's hard on everybody.
Yeah. So please, anyone that wants to reach out, I'm open book. If you can't tell, shoot me a message on socials. Keep an eye on. I'll start developing the pod and get further along the line. So I appreciate that, man. That was really cool, and I appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Graeme. Thank you, and I'll see you in just a couple of months in Athens, Georgia.
It's coming up fast, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and shout out to Window Film Revolution. They've been a big part of my change too, and Rick's helped, with that evolution. So great guy doing great things along, I could sit here for another hour and a half telling all the great people in our industry, but come and meet us face to face in Athens, Georgia.
Cool. Well, thanks again.
Awesome.
Graeme. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric.
Enjoy
Appreciate
your
you guys. Cheers, man. Bye-bye.